Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, we appreciate your time as always. It is important to know that today will be the day when the United States of America's travel ban will go into effect with regards to some of those nations. It is vitally important to know that the continent of Africa is experiencing a tremendous change in terms of its geopolitical engagement at this moment. The United States of America, under the current president, Mr. Donald Trump, has made some significant moves that has impacted the continent of Africa from a whole lot of areas. But one thing is clear, that the continent of Africa hasn't gotten the message yet. It's important to know that Mr. Trump has come out clear and singled out a number of countries across the region. More importantly, we see African leaders and some organizations across the continent of Africa talking about why this particular move should be implemented or talking to those particular nations in the region. Make no mistake, the United States is going through incredible challenges at the moment, and more importantly, the immigration issue, not just from the continent of Africa. But I think this must be a wake-up call, like we've said, that the continent of Africa must start picking up itself and making strategic choices which are relevant in terms of its own sovereignty and its self-sufficiency. More importantly, talking about sustainability in a way that it will limit the travel to the United States of America. Make no error, these countries like Somalia and also the Republic of the Congo that have been singled out at this moment, we see other officials across the region coming out and claiming that the United States is so quick in making those decisions. I think these experts or these officials fail, or these nations still fail to understand where Mr. Trump is coming from. Mr. Donald Trump does have a particular mandate that he is to execute, and he's playing onto that. So it drives me sometimes really confused on the reason why African leaders still don't pick these particular signals. It's important to know that at this time, the continent of Africa still failed to get the signal from the United States of America. Make no mistake, the country of South Africa, a very important geopolitical player and one of the most important business partners that the United States of America has in the continent of Africa at this stage. We've seen the South African government come under tremendous pressure, Egypt on the other hand, and more importantly, other players around the region. The expert says that this particular move by the United States of America is a wake-up call and it's a signal for the continent of Africa. It's important for us to continue to know that African nations must step up to the plate and make some significant decisions. We've seen countries like Chad that came out clear and pinpoint those areas where going back to making sure that they can lambast the United States of America's own terms of their visa decision. Africa, it is about time for you to wake up and start thinking from the strategic point of view that at this moment you have to sit up and make some important decisions that can enable you and your citizens. According to an expert from the country of South Africa, it's important to know that the United States of America is a transactional administration at the moment, and according to experts saying that Mr. Donald Trump likes to put countries at the back foot to enable him to have more leverage in terms of his own particular interaction. That may be a strategy, however. The continent of Africa still must know that the United States of America is not joking at the moment, considering how Haitians and other people or nationals from different countries are being expelled. The continent of Africa must accept that the geopolitical environment has changed and the continent of Africa too must change. Let's play this clip from Newzroom Afrika.
The presidency says it does not view the latest US travel alert for South Africa as a cause of concern. This follows a travel advisory issued by the US government last week, placing South Africa under a level 2 alert just days after President Cyril Ramaphosa's visit to the White House. Meanwhile, a new travel restriction announced by the US President Donald Trump is set to take effect today. The order targets citizens from 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, and Somalia, with a full entry ban. While the measure is being justified as a national security precaution, it has sparked criticism from human rights groups and foreign governments who argue that it is discriminatory. Joining us now to unpack the implications of this travel ban is Dr. Oscar van Heerden, a senior research fellow at the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg. A very good morning to you, Dr. van Heerden. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Let's start off with the travel alert. It's not the first time that there has been a travel alert, especially a level 2 travel alert. But what do you make of this one, specifically coming after that meeting between President Cyril Ramaphosa and Donald Trump?
Yeah, as far as, thanks, Albert. As far as the level 2 restriction is concerned, I tend to agree with President Ramaphosa and his administration, which is that I don't think there's anything to be concerned about. If and when it does happen, should it happen, that's when the country will engage with that particular issue. But for now, it's just a list. As for the other African countries, I mean, I think there's a few things that needs to be taken. I mean, the knee-jerk reaction would be that this is discriminatory, this is racist. We know that President Trump, for example, used expletives in his first term, referring to some African countries and so forth. So we know what his attitude is towards the continent. However, I do think that there's a few factors that must be taken into consideration. I do think that Marco Rubio's State Department, together with Homeland Security, together with the CIA, they all would have had an input into this travel ban. And I do think that those countries, particularly the ones from the continent in Africa, needs to do some introspection to look at, are there some validity behind these claims of exporting of terrorism, extremism, and so forth, and do they indeed pose a threat? I think that's the first thing, just like South Africa did when there were these falsehoods and lies about white genocide and so forth. So if you wanted to repair the relations going forward, I do think that the 7 countries on the continent will have to do some introspection. That's the first thing. And I think the second thing is that we know that Donald Trump is a disruptor. He wants to put you on the back foot in order to be able to negotiate with you on favorable terms. And this could be one of those where, certain countries have been identified, put them on the back foot with the travel ban and see when they come begging how to negotiate around certain things. So that this could also be one of the things.
Yep.
What surprises me even more is the regional organization, the African Union, coming out and saying a number of words, just making comments which I think would not still sit well in the United States of America. I think that the African Union failed to understand that the geopolitical environment has changed in North America, and at this time, the organization must start picking its collaboration and fight in a careful way. The statement coming out from the African Union talking about why the United States is moving so fast, and in terms of them consulting other countries and going through a particular process, I think the US doesn't really care about this particular communication. Based on Mr. Trump's own history, considering his previous administration, what he did, single out a couple of nations, Africa still don't get the message. Now he's come back to the second term and he's come out openly and let them know where he stands on issues. This keeps me confused on the reason why the African Union still don't understand where the United States of America stands. It is about time for the regional organizations to step up to the plate and inform member nations that the United States of America is at a crossroad at the moment, and the current president has a mandate and it has informed a number of countries in the region. Some will question that not every national from those nations have particular concerns in terms of their activities, talking about global threats that are happening around the world. But that's not important at this time. Mr. Trump has come out clear and informed the continent of Africa that you are on your own, and at this moment, I'm going to make those decisions irrespective of what you think. So the African Union still don't get it at this critical time in African history. Let's play the clip.
What then do you make of the response from the African Union Commission? I just quickly want to read from it. It says that while recognizing the sovereign right of all nations to protect their borders and to ensure the security of their citizens, the African Union Commission respectfully appeals to the United States to exercise this right in a manner that is balanced, evidence-based, and reflective of a long-standing partnership between the United States and Africa. Is this based on the assumption that it could not be evidence-based? Because we know that Donald Trump has previously signed off on executive orders that are not evidence-based, and South Africa is a case in point with the so-called white genocide.
No, absolutely. I mean, the truth is that the African Union is saying, can you please share with us what are this evidence that you are using to come up with this travel ban? But in reality, the United States doesn't have to provide any evidence. It is up to the administration. What's open to some countries, as for the Vienna Convention, is to reciprocate. Chad has done so already. We see Chad has also enforced travel bans for all Americans to that country. It's not necessarily the way to go, I would argue, if you want to repair relations. But there are times when reciprocity is required. I remember a few years ago when certain visa restrictions were placed on countries all over the world, and countries like Brazil, for example, immediately reciprocated and said to the Americans, if you are going to require us to have visas, then your people must also have visas to come to Brazil. And of course, Brazil is a big country, and a lot of tourists and a lot of people from America come to Brazil. But those are options that are open to countries. But it's, as I say, it's not necessarily the right move.
Yeah, and all of this also happening, of course, with the geopolitics currently unfolding. But I want to know what it means then for trade specifically between the United States, as well as when we just focusing on African states right now, because it is African states, it is the Middle East that is affected, and I think with the Caribbean islands as well. No Europeans, so meaning that the threat that has been identified could be coming from these countries. You know about the incident that happened in Colorado, as an example. That individual is from Egypt, Egypt not being on the list as well. But as we understand that these discussions would have happened way before even this incident would have taken place in Colorado. But it just, for me, what it has left me with is that does it mean that the threat could only be coming from these particular nations? But what the Colorado incident is telling us that actually terrorism could come from wherever.
No, absolutely. I mean, and this is why I think the AU is saying, please share with us the evidence and so on. There is a number of the countries, almost all of the countries is Muslim countries. So there's an element of potentially Islamophobia, trying to associate Islam with terrorism and so forth. These are all factors that needs to be taken into consideration. It is 7 of 54 countries on the continent. I do think we must put it into perspective in terms of the rest of the continent. But as I say, there could be a plethora of reasons why Trump has decided that this ban must come into effect, specifically with these countries. We know, for example, Yemen is engaged in certain tensions and conflicts with the state of Israel, and also disrupting the ships and sea routes in that part of the world. So there could be a host of reasons. The Taliban is back in control in Afghanistan, and so on and so forth. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is that I think we are seeing an administration that we know is right-wing, that is conservative, that has very little regard for Africa, as for their president, Donald Trump. And we need to engage these issues from that departure point. And also ask the question, one of the geostrategic and geopolitical issues is that this is just going to further push certain African countries further far east to China, because they don't have these travel bans with the second largest economy in the world.
These are important terms in the global economy as we see China at the moment engaging the United States of America. The European Union is under pressure from the United States of America's own tariff, and a number of countries across the region of the continent of Africa are facing the same similar problems regards to Trump tariff. I think that in a geopolitical environment like this, the continent of Africa must pay closer attention on events that are happening in Moscow, in Beijing, looking at Washington, more importantly in Ankara and other countries across Africa's geopolitical partners. For the continent of Africa not to get this particular moment that things are changing and the geostrategic relationship must shift as well, then it's a fundamental mistake. The expert from the country of South Africa see it this way. Let's roll the clip.
Yeah, and just finally, I guess it comes as no surprise how Iran has responded to this. Iran saying that it condemns the racist mentality behind the U.S. Travel ban. What does this all mean for the Red Sea?
No, I don't think it's going to have an immediate implication. I think people are upset. Remember, Alda, there's also sporting events that are being disrupted now. We know, for example, that the United States are hosting the FIFA World Cup next year, as well as the Olympics in 2028. What does that say about supporters of these countries? Iran has already qualified for the FIFA World Cup. Does it mean that Iranians are not going to be allowed to come and support their team, and so on and so forth? So
and that's the interesting. Dr. van Heerden, and I think that's the interesting thing, right? Is that you're saying that the ban would not affect the athletes themselves, but we know sporting is also about the fans.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about, it's income generation, and perhaps the United States doesn't need it because it's the number one, economy in the world. But the truth of the matter is that these sporting events is about the gees, it's about the people that come from all over the world supporting their teams and also being exposed to your country and so on. It's certainly the reason why other countries are doing it, to try and get tourism and support to come in. So there's going to be that implication as well. Clearly, the peoples of these countries are not going to be allowed to come to these sporting events.
Do you foresee any legal challenges to this executive order?
I don't think so. I don't think so. To go up against the United States, I think that certain multilateral fora, there will be concerns, potentially petitions. But as to legally challenging it, I don't think you're going to get anywhere with the Trump administration.
All right. Thank you so much for making time for us. Dr. Oscar van Heerden there, Diplomacy and Leadership.
It is important to note that the United States of America will be hosting the Olympics soon and the World Cup, considering that supporters will be coming from a number of countries from around the world to the United States of America. I think that the US is playing geopolitical game here. To an extent, it wants to clean up the system based on what they perceive, and more importantly, how would it play out in regards to those nationals that will be traveling to the United States of America to support their own football team. This is a big issue in terms of geopolitical engagement in the global community, and African nations who have qualified for the World Cup and those who will be going for the Olympics should pay attention on how to deal with this particular issue. It is important to know that Africa at this time still don't understand where the United States of America stand, and that is a big concern. It's important to know that if the United States of America can push back and forth, the largest economy and one of the most powerful nations in the continent of Africa, talking about South Africa, where the African continent is not sure if the African Growth and Opportunity Act will be renewed come September. This is a wake-up call again for the continent of Africa to start reviving the African continental fair trade. Because if you continue to rely on your geopolitical partners who are at the moment sending you more signals like never before seen, then you don't know what you are doing at this stage. The United States of America has indicated that at this time, it really wants to clean up its system. These nations in the continent of Africa that have been singled out and informed that their nationals will find it difficult to travel to the United States of America, instead of the governments of those nations to come out clear and make their own position on where they stand, we see these leaders come out and start begging, talking about some particular, just complaining. This is not going to work. At this moment, the United States of America really wants to strengthen things in a number of areas, and we expect the continent of African leaders and nationals, expert consultants who are more importantly focused in those particular areas of immigration to come out clear and indicate where the continent stands with regards to going to the United States of America. These are critical times across the board, and the continent must not neglect this particular opportunity that the United States of America is offering them at this stage for them to come out clear and stick their position no matter what it is. Africa must make unpopular choices at this time, and at this moment the global community will be looking very closely. I'm not saying that it's only African nationals who are not going to be traveling to the United States of America, considering those nations. However, what I'm saying here is that it could be a coordinated effort. To an extent, the African Union made a point there, but more importantly, the United States is thinking about itself and its own nationals, and this is not going to cross their mind in any way. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know what you think with regards to this particular decision from the country of the United States of America, and with the travel ban going into effect today, it's important for Africa to sit up. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.